Right, the last speaker of the morning, and then we will have lunch. Please welcome Mr. Boris de Vos from HP.
Good morning, everyone. So first, a little bit of an introduction about what we're going to concentrate on speaking today on that session. I had a lot of history about OpenStack, but Alan has covered that already. So obviously, you are all aware, and I guess we have a lot of people who understand OpenStack in this room, so we're not going to repeat that. So to introduce myself very quickly, the name is Boris de Vos. I'm French. Sorry, nobody's perfect, yeah? So like the name says, but I live in the UK for over 20 years. Hence the weird accent. So if there's anything I say, you're not catching, don't hesitate. I'm happy to repeat it in a French accent. That will help everybody understand. So my background is a little bit special. It's a bit different, I'm afraid, than the rest of the people. So I come originally from HP, back in the days, where I was supporting the ProLiant infrastructure on Linux. And lucky enough, I was actually working with one of the biggest customer based in Switzerland that runs a very large OpenStack and does actually some research on acceleration of particles. Does that tell somebody something, yeah? So, of course, you know what I'm talking about. So, lucky enough, I supported those guys when they were building the LHQ, essentially. And they mentioned me to Red Hat, and luckily enough, I did get deployed by Red Hat after that. So I spent 4 years at Red Hat managing pre-sales services across EMEA. And so obviously the rise of open source virtualization. The main business of Red Hat at this stage was obviously to replace Sun, the good old E20K, E10K server that you have in a corner, replace that with commodity infrastructure, RHEL on top, and obviously the same ISVs. So that was the rise of it. After that, again, I got a little bit of a lucky streak for me. I got employed by Canonical, by Ubuntu. So for 2.5 years, I stayed there to provide services and built effectively some services around server, cloud, and as well enterprise desktop. And from there, another jump again into the world of... So in Ubuntu, obviously, was there for the first UEC, which was Eucalyptus-based, and obviously the first version of OpenStack that were integrated with the Ubuntu distribution. So that's where I got my background. It's very technical. It's very deep down infrastructure in businesses. I've optimized Linux for high-frequency platforms and does this kind of thing with the financials in London for years. Then I find myself in OpenStack. I find myself in KVM specialty, obviously. And from Canonical, I got lucky enough, I got employed by a company called Nebula, which you may have heard of, which was effectively the big NASA team, 95% of NASA employees, which with Rackspace created the initial OpenStack project. So my background is effectively right into the birth of this. This is back 2009, 2010 we're talking about. Today, I work for HP. I've been employed with HP to look after OpenStack and obviously what HP does in OpenStack. So today, this is what we're going to concentrate on. So the obligatory marketing slide, I'm afraid, Ilion. Ilion is the name of HP suite of products. It's supposed to be based on Helios, the son of God. So we're supposed to be above all the clouds. You know, marketing, not going to go further in that. Somebody has actually said it's a double charge, helium atom, whatever. Ilion is the name, right? What is interesting is what do we do with this is we have integrated all the following suite of HP products into a single namespace. So Ilion is a namespace. What do we find there? We find on the left the traditional HP cloud system. No secret, this is proprietary software, well-established, very stable, that's built on VMware infrastructure. And Forrester has put us as #1 private cloud in HP. Doing this, obviously, we provide hardware, services, and all the accompanying service to adopt that. In the middle, we have managed services. This is what we call typically VPC, virtual private cloud. So somebody managed the data center for you, and you're just basically running your application. Again, very traditional enterprise workload. Now, on the right, we have something that not a lot of people are aware of, but HP has engaged stealthily into OpenStack for the last 3 years. 2.5 years ago, we built one of the biggest commercial deployment public of OpenStack. This is called the HP Helion Public Cloud now, which is known as HP Cloud. This is a platform that is actually free to use, completely SaaS. You can use it today. You just go to hpcloud.com, you register, you put a credit card in, that's all you've got to do. That platform is pay in arrears. So you put your credit card, but you don't pay yet. You're just using it. And then obviously we measure exactly your usage per hour, per gigabyte per day, per month, and charge you at the end of the 30 days. So a very quick way to try the platform. It is full SaaS, and this is obviously 100% based OpenStack. So HP has been running that public platform for 2.5 years now. We're looking at over 8,000 servers, 4 floors, 2 data centers, a very large deployment. And of course, that's where we gain our full expertise into OpenStack. In the middle, on the left, you find effectively, in the middle, you find our new product based on OpenStack. So HP has invested heavily, and we're going to release 2 products that I'm going to present today. The first one is called HP Elion OpenStack Community Edition. This will be a version very close to upstream, tracking trunk, with a very fast release cycle, allowing you to stay on top of trunk while having a supported platform. I think a lot of people before me have really insisted on the fact that OpenStack is hard to build from upstream. I'm not going to say it's hard, but it requires definitely an expertise in command line, Unix, Linux. You need to be an experienced Linux engineer. What I think is more interestingly a problem for enterprise in adoption of OpenStack is the release cycle. 6 months is awfully fast for anything that is enterprise workload. So you're looking at enterprise that will take about 12, 18 months to qualify a platform and application in board. And once you have that, within 6 months, you already got a new release. So this is why HP is effectively finding the need for the enterprise to have 2 streams. One community stream with fast adoption, another one called HP Elion OpenStack, which is obviously a commercial edition. This is targeted at enterprise with a much longer release cycle, obviously, a much longer support cycle, and of course integration of a fair bit of add-on, like we've seen the other player, a bit of a stopgap measure into what is missing in OpenStack to be viable in enterprise production today. So again, what HP has done is very, very serious. We've invested billions, and we have made basically all our converged platform be OpenStack all across, and that includes the existing product. So in the existing product, we have actually re-engineered them and introduced the core of OpenStack services, essentially Nova, Keystone, Swift, really the basic OpenStack-based services, at the firmware, at the base level of all those services. What that means is even if you adopt an old platform and something based on VMware, you're still dealing at the bottom layer with OpenStack API. You're still dealing with compute, network, storage API, 100% upstream, 100% compatible with OpenStack, not modified, not extended or changed. And that's really the guarantee and the promise of the platform here. So we use OpenStack, we put some HP value add, and obviously that gives you the HP Elion OpenStack product. Our vision is to completely abstract the delivery model. At the end of the day, when you're using cloud, it doesn't matter if you're using it private, public, or in managed. You should be able to have that workload portability, and you should eventually stress the vendor to give you the same kind of price no matter what you run. You'll find that businesses in the journey to the cloud will take an application and say, oh, maybe this is good in the cloud. Well, there's a moment in time for everything. An application could be good in the first 6 months in the cloud, but then maybe you go and scale out. And the public cloud model is a model where you're going to pay per use on the metric you charge, and there is effectively a threshold where if you use that much 24/7, you might as well bring the infrastructure back in. So you need to be very careful with the cost there, particularly with the public cost. So the HP public cloud services that currently exist, this is a very brief view on the services that you'll find there. And these are very classic. I mean, compute, object storage, a little bit of add-on, DNS, a little bit of add-on, cloud CDN. We have a CDN that backs up our object storage that is based on Akamai. So essentially, you create a container in your object store, you click a tick box, and that will be automatically backed up on the Akamai network, allowing you, obviously, to reach your content anywhere you are in the world. The other services, like cloud block storage, which is based in Cinder, is now GA, as you can see. So the way we bring services in the public cloud is we start with early access, where we expose it to a limited number of customers. When we have enough fix, enough patches, enough resolution, and we think the service is stable enough, we expose it to a public beta area. And finally, after that, the next step is to give a 4.9 SLA on the service itself, where we're considering the service stable. So the slide that the point that you see with the star are things that already actually moved to the 99.95% SLA. So it's a very interesting way to bring the services in, because it allows you to test them without actually compromising anything that you do seriously or for production. What have we done as well? So we've done a lot of work, as I say, for the last 2 years. One of the main work we've been doing is on the ironic, as we say, ironic naming, project in OpenStack. What those Ironic does, essentially, it does pixie boot on your server. Instead of deploying a VM, I can actually deploy a piece of bare metal. That's, boiled down, that's essentially what it does. What we did with HP is we connected to the ILO interface of our servers. So obviously, if you run ProLiant on this and HP ProLiant on this, you'll be able to have a much, I would say, less noisy, less resource-intensive network deployment by tapping directly into ILO. What we did as well is to have power control, so we had a driver to be able effectively to throttle, to step down, or to shut down calls on the server when they're not being used, all this via OpenStack. And then another advantage of C, obviously, is the OpenStack plugin, which allows me to have hardware alerts. So if my disk fails, if my hardware has an issue, if anything at the low-level infrastructure management exists, I'm going to be able to have a messaging coming back into, of course, OpenStack. But this is obviously OpenStack on HP hardware, but that's not all we support. OpenStack is OpenStack, and we will keep OpenStack open source and free, which means you're completely welcome to take the HP OpenStack product and deploy it on any other hardware. As I was saying, what we've been doing is to really put OpenStack into the base of our infrastructure. This is a little bit of an insidious form to help people to use Linux. It's like a few years ago, if you say to people, do you use Linux on your desktop? Nobody will say yes. Do you use Linux at home? Everybody says, no, I don't use Linux at home. And then you go, actually, do you have a wireless router? Do you have actually an access point? Ah, you're using Linux at home. You were not even aware of it. That's exactly the same concept we're doing in HP. We're introducing OpenStack at the bottom layer, but in a traditional product, people continue to use the normal management, the normal UI that they had so far. They just know that they had a release upgrade, and then suddenly at the bottom layer, they're actually speaking with OpenStack API, which will help, obviously, the future converged platform to come in with full OpenStack and traditional. So what have we done? Through the whole collection of HP storage, we're talking about HP FreePAR, we're talking about HP Left Hand, we're talking about HP StoreAll and HP Store Once. All that range of HP storage has already included in the firmware the Swift API and the Cinder driver. This means that you can tap directly into your SAN, your hardware device, your storage device, by using an OpenStack call. You don't need a server in front of it. You don't need a service in front of it. The actual service is hosted directly on a piece of hardware. We're doing exactly the same thing for SDN with the HP networking connection of switches as well. So very interesting to understand what HP has been doing so far. I know we say we're talking about involvement later. Sorry, it's my only shot for involvement, so I have to speak about it now. HP is a very large company, 300,000 employees. So obviously for us, it's a little bit unfair when we get involved in OpenStack and we send an email internally to register to become a member of OpenStack. Overnight, there's 1,500 new members from HP. That's just the sheer numbers. So don't see that as an overtake. It's a very large player, so obviously the numbers are big. And this is reflected, obviously, in our contribution lately in what we've been doing in OpenStack. So for the last couple of years, really, the investment have been so big that we became pretty much one of the main provider and contributor to OpenStack. We do as well a lot of other things, as you can see. We lend hardware to resource infrastructure. We have as well a fair bit of PTL. We have board members. I mean, we are very deeply involved in it, and it's not a joke or a faff of the moment. It is a true investment. The contribution I took icehouse, and I took, again, my source is Stackalytics.com. Stackalytics, as we know, is run by another company, but I think the commits are quite good. Everybody will have his own day by showing their own name on top, so I'm not it's a bit of a marketing there, but the idea is effectively HP has contributed a lot and across a lot of modules generally to OpenStack. So it's not just a productization of OpenStack, but it's really a full involvement, open source, and product altogether. I welcome you to visit the Stackalytics.com website. It's a very interesting website for the fact that it has contribution, but it has as well drivers. So if you look at drivers, you can see every single storage backend and driver and what they've been provided, which is, again, interesting to make OpenStack integrate into your existing enterprise. In greenfield deployment, it's very easy. You're starting from scratch. But once you have OpenStack in the enterprise, well, you will want it maybe to consume existing resources. So this is where this becomes quite important. So the different OpenStack edition, as you can see, two different ones, as I mentioned. One that we call Community Edition, that is 100% pure upstream OpenStack. There is no HP add-on in terms of code. The only two differences on it is we pass that code through a product that we have called HP Fortify, which will eventually look for very basic buffer overflow in the code, issues, copyright protection. I mean, it's just a very quick hardening and quick come through before we ship the product to our end customer. And the last thing is we actually use a unique installer. We're using OOO. So who has heard of OOO here? Not that many. It's worth explaining. OOO, OpenStack on OpenStack. In fact, OpenStack has all the tools to deploy OpenStack itself. So the whole idea of OOO is to actually have a framework for developer to deploy OpenStack version of services from an existing OpenStack installation. So we base our installation on that, where we deploy initially a seed VM that runs in container all the OpenStack services, and from there we go and do Ironic and deploy bare metal and the rest of the infrastructure. So our installer is quite easy. It's quite unique in that it's a couple of scripts to run, and usually you get going. The same applies to the commercial edition, obviously. The addition with commercial editions, I'm going to show you at the end of the slide deck, comes with a lot of different additional products. What is interesting in a commercial edition, and what, as we mentioned today through the presentation, NFV is coming very strongly, but not just NFV. With NFV, you have two technical pieces that are essential on the KVM hypervisor. The first one is DPDK, which is the latest Intel plain development kit for network, which will accelerate network considerably. The second one is what we call SR-IOV, single root I/O virtualization. In short, this is the ability to plug a card in your computer, and instead of having a single device, a single identity, it will have several. And of course, your VM will be able to use those identities directly, of course, not using a driver, not using a fake device, but tapping directly into a pass-through device. This will reduce a lot latency, particularly for NFV, telco, and developing VNFs. Other things as well, and then self-healing HA. So as been mentioned already by Suzy product, I think we have identified that gap as well. The plain reference implementation of OpenStack has some single point of failure across certain services, such as authentication, such as Glance, for example, such as MySQL and Rabbit, which are running underneath into the application too. And we have effectively, in a commercial edition, we make those services as well highly available, just to make sure effectively there is resilience. So the community, as I mentioned what it is, pure OpenStack. What is very interesting is we have a release cadence of 6 weeks. You don't have to take that 6 weeks, but every 6 weeks we will provide a patch to bring you much closer to trunk. So you're still running a supported platform from HP. It is entirely free. It is still under Apache 2 license, but there is obviously an optional support available. So if you were to want to try just the community edition, you could, and then at the moment where maybe things are escaping you a little bit, you could trigger then additional support. So the preview was the 7th of May. That is now GA. It is essentially a download on the HP website that will give you a big blob, and from there, you actually deploy OpenStack. I'm very sorry for that picture. The more I look at it, the more I say, I'm not sure if he looks like a cloud expert, that guy, right? But never mind. So I think what is interesting is that effectively that foundation care is available in 24/7 onto even the community edition. So you don't have, again, to take the full stack, and you can just use OpenStack upstream with minimal payment to start with. You can deploy it on existing infrastructure, and then you can trigger additional support when needed. Now, HP Lyon OpenStack itself, the large product, this is not GA yet. It will be GA very, very shortly. It says September there, so I've removed the date because of that, but we're expecting it very shortly. The idea that what do we do is secure, scalable, really enterprise ready. We have a limit there of 1,000 compute nodes with 40,000 VM in the first iteration. Obviously, we will scale that later on. What's interesting is out of the box, we provide KVM, ESX, and Hyper-V coming soon. I think that's common across vendors to reinstate the multi-hypervisor scene, essentially. And intuitive management, so we have built additional consoles, hybrid consoles, to help you to do resource allocation, to help you to import existing templates. We're going to have a template engine, for example, that is Tosca compliant, that help you to import all CSA templates from HP, and as well use Heat, obviously the templating of OpenStack. So to resume, very easy. Again, as I say, we have two streams, the community, the commercial edition, the ability, obviously, to use one for the other. You can see with 4. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. But the main idea is really to say that with the public cloud existing, what you can get to get started in learning OpenStack is quickly go on the public cloud. We offer a credit to start with, so you don't have to pay right away. But the idea is we're then going to provide an integration through our cloud service automation across any of those workloads. So as I say, isolating and abstracting the delivery model. I deploy an application. That application is made of 6 VM with database services, app servers, and etc. I should be able to transition that to a hosted environment, to a public environment, and vice versa, with minimum disruption, but particularly no reprovisioning in a way of no procurement again. That should be included in my price. That's the vision anyway that we have into providing a converged platform onto effectively an abstraction of delivery model. Inside, external, community, shared, doesn't matter. So now you can see the full strategy that I've tried to explain. I think this makes it a little bit further. So on the left, the community edition. So the HP OpenStack distribution, some certified plugin, an installation upgrade distribution, again, based on O, as I mentioned before. So OpenStack on OpenStack to redeploy existing services. So of course, as you deploy them initially with that, you make it easy to redeploy a newer version of Nova, for example, on top of it. And alignment with certification for hardware platform, life cycle, and as I say, a hardening and scale by HP from OpenStack that is redistributed. The same has been mentioned previously. The commitment of HP here is all the add-on that we bring to a commercial product are not going to end up as a commercial and as a proprietary stuff and blob. They will be obviously upstream back to OpenStack. Project will be open and supported. The only problem with open source is we can't guarantee the subsistence of it. Darwin said, it's not the strongest of the species that survive, but the one the most adapted to change. And I will take a tweak to open source on this and say it's not the best project in open source that survive, but the one that gathers the most following. So obviously, we will open a new project for the additional and for the stuff that we learn, particularly stuff that we learn from the public platform. I mean, we've been running a very large public cloud for 2.5 years. You can imagine that things like billing, showback, chargeback is things that we needed to have from the get-go. So obviously, we have done a lot of coding. We have done a lot of advance on this. Those projects will end up, for now, in a commercial product and slowly be redistributed and contributed to OpenStack. Again, the mentality there of HP and the commitment is to follow pure upstream. We're not here to divert the API. We're not here to end up with an island and a proprietary product, but to the reverse. We say HP is an enterprise vendor. We're going to close the gap from now, and then later on, all those projects will actually be pushed down to OpenStack, and hopefully, if there's interest, they will be living on their own. That's where O comes from, for example. O comes exactly from that background. So it's very important to understand that there is a commitment to open source, but there is as well a vision to understand that for enterprise to adopt a solution of OpenStack tomorrow and put that in production rather than just test dev and kicking the tires, you obviously need, 1, the support of a big vendor, 2, integration with hardware, and 3, obviously, people that have the capacity to support you directly and help you through that journey to very quickly go to market and have something running. The complexity of OpenStack in the number of projects has made it a little bit of his enemy too. It's very nice to be free and implement an OpenStack exactly as I want to, but at the same time, it lacks direction for people who need it, right? And every time I have to answer a big tender or recommend to a big customer the orientation for cloud, my first question is, what do you intend to use your OpenStack cloud for? If you have an OpenStack cloud where you want to do mainly storage, well, it's going to make a lot of sense to have a bigger Swift deployment, to have a bigger Cinder deployment than compute. If you're going to do an OpenStack cloud where most of your workload is compute, then it makes sense to make the reverse. So what you do to start with, you start with a kind of a middle ground of both services, and then over time, you're going to be able to analyze what you use most and things that need scaling and things that don't need scaling. The beauty of OpenStack really is it's a collection or bunch of web services. You could deploy all of them on a single container on a single laptop, or you could deploy that across 2,000 servers too. And obviously, the place those web servers in the architecture they're going to take is a deep matter of your workload, right? I have currently a customer that wants to have 600 IPsec root per VM. I'm going to dedicate a full node to Neutron in that infrastructure. I'm not going to host Neutron on an hypervisor service. That makes sense. Okay? So that's all I had for you guys today. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you again.